Today is November 11th, 2022. I'm doing an update on the situation in Ukraine in addition to the live stream that I will be doing a little bit after I record this, but this will actually be published after the live stream. I hope that's not too confusing, but let's get right into what is going on in Ukraine right now. Let's look at the map. This is liveuamap.com. It is very pro-Ukrainian, so just keep that in mind as I'm explaining things. We take a look at the map and we'll zoom in to the Kherson region. Well, you see Ukrainian forces advancing, but they're not actually advancing. They're just moving in to territory that has already been left by Russian forces. This is from Reuters. Russia says it has completed Kherson withdrawal. So the withdrawal is complete. All Russian forces have moved to the east bank of the Dnieper River, and Ukrainian forces are just filling in the void. And we'll see what Russia does in regards to these troops moving within range of Russian long-range weaponry. We'll see. Getting back to the map, while Ukraine was concentrating the remnants of its army, the summation of its reserves pointed at Kherson for this massive offensive that they were planning, that now they're not going to be fighting. Let's move eastward. So we're the Zaporozhye area and southern Donetsk, around Vuhledar, right here, and Pavlovka. Russian sources are claiming they have either entered or taken this town. And of course, because this is a pro-Ukrainian map, they're going to wait until the very last moment to acknowledge that. But the rifle here indicates that fighting is taking place around here. Russian forces were making progress outside of Donetsk city, around the airport. And of course, Russian forces continue fighting in Bakhmut. And all along this line, Ukraine, their offensive has ended, and Russia has been on the attack. Why is this happening? If Ukraine has the upper hand and they're winning and Russian forces are crumbling, how come they were preparing for this all-out assault on Kherson, and everywhere else their forces are diminished and folding under Russian offensives, which are not even fully reinforced yet by the 300,000 plus reinforcements, the mobilization. So these are all things to keep in mind. We're talking about a war of attrition. Russia is not trying to take territory. They are moving away from where Ukraine has concentrated all of its forces, and they're pushing where Ukrainian forces are weak. This is what they're doing. Their goal is to demilitarize Ukraine. That means destroy their military. That is one of the three primary objectives of the special military operation, and that is what they are doing right now as we speak. That said, let's talk about the other part of attrition. You're removing Ukrainian forces and their weaponry from the battlefield. What about Ukraine's, and not Ukraine's ability, but their Western sponsors' ability to replace these losses? I want to direct your attention to this from the U.S. Department of Defense. This was November 10th, 2022, so just yesterday, $400 million in additional assistance for Ukraine. And they have a little list here. And as always, I'm going to go over this list. So number one on the list, missiles for Hawk air defense systems. These are air defense systems that were developed in the 1960s, and no one in the US military has used them in over 20 years. This is what they have resorted to, sending them completely defunct system that the US hasn't used for 2 decades. But they can't just send them to Ukraine because none of them work. Their missiles do not work, so they have to refurbish all of these missiles, however many they're going to send. They refuse to give a number, which is very telling. You have to remember that refurbishing equipment is very similar to manufacturing new equipment. You can only do so many at a time. So whatever the number is that the US is pledging to Ukraine, they're probably going to have to send them in batches. The next item on the list is 4 Avenger air defense systems and Stinger missiles. So we heard about the huge number of Stinger missiles the US transferred to Ukraine since the end of February onward. And we all heard how the US depleted its inventory. They have nothing left without emptying their inventory out completely. And it will take years for them to replace all of these Stinger missiles they transferred to Ukraine. So the Avenger air defense system is a launcher system for this missile that is usually man-portable. It is attached to the back of a Humvee. And there are additional electronics involved, command and control, and sensors involved. So it's a bit more sophisticated than just a man-portable system, but it's the same missile. It is a short-range missile, and the Avenger is meant to protect troop formations. 4 Avenger air defense systems is not even enough to protect a single battalion of about 1,000 troops. So for example, the Russian battalion tactical group of about 600 to 800 men, they will have up to 6 Pantsir S1 mobile air defense systems. And the Pantsir S1, depending on which version you're talking about, has a range between 20 to 40 kilometers versus the Stinger, which has a range of up to only 5 kilometers. So again, this is what I've been talking about throughout this conflict. Ukraine is losing Soviet-era equipment that was very effective, very capable, but they're losing it over time. And what the West is giving them in return is inferior in terms of quality and quantity. I want to show you this article again. CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies. It's funded by the US government, European governments, Western the arms industry. Can the United States do more for Ukrainian air defense? I was talking about how even US government-sponsored analysts are admitting that Ukraine's air defense systems are being destroyed and the West has no ability to replace them. This is what they say about the Avenger. Avenger is a truck-mounted Stinger that is widely fielded with US forces. The United States will likely give some to Ukraine by squeezing training pools and maintenance overhead. However, numbers will be small because US units need the system for their own use, and the low Stinger inventory would limit resupplies. This is exactly what I said. So what else is the Pentagon sending Ukraine in this $400 million assistance package? Additional ammunition for high mobility artillery rocket system, HIMARS. And they don't mention the quantity, because if they told you the quantity, you would get an idea of just how close they are to running out of rockets for this system. 21,155 millimeter artillery rounds. So standard artillery rounds for the M777, for example. Ukraine admits or has said that before the offensive began, they were firing up to 6,000 rounds per day across the entire front line. That's how much artillery they were using. So 21,000 rounds at 6,000 rounds per day, that's not even 3 days. And of course, they're in the middle of an offensive. They will be using more artillery, so it will last even less than 3 days. The previous package that I covered did not even include standard 155 millimeter artillery rounds, and the one before that was so far back and so small that surely that wouldn't have lasted until now. Again, this is the problem that Ukraine and its Western sponsors have, and the West has even admitted that they are out of artillery for Ukraine. What else? 500 precision-guided 155 millimeter artillery rounds. These are the GPS-guided Excalibur rounds. And this is a quantity, 500 this time. I think it was 500 last time. This is a number that continuously shrinks with each assistance package. They're also sending 10,120 millimeter mortar rounds, 100 high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, 100 Humvees. And they're sending these because Ukraine is out of everything. And they don't have armored personnel carriers or infantry fighting vehicles to transfer to Ukraine. So they're sending Hummers instead. And this is not adequate. This is not a replacement for more heavily armed personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles, and surely not a replacement for main battle tanks, which Ukraine is also running out of. 400 grenade launchers, small arms, optics, and more than 20 million rounds of small arms ammunition. 20 million rounds, that is actually much larger than what they have been sending, but that's only enough to arm a single brigade of about 4,000 soldiers for less than a month, about 23 days. They're also going to send demolition equipment for obstacle clearing and cold weather protective gear, but they don't give any details regarding what that actually is or in regards to quantities. There was also a Pentagon briefing, this right here, that goes along with this announced $400 million assistance package. The link will be in the video description below, and there's even a video that you could watch. And you have, so they give the overview of this assistance package, and then you have journalists asking whether or not the Avenger system, for example, they're only sending 4, which is ridiculous. They're sending only 4 of these systems. The journalists ask, because of the additional electronics and equipment, is this going to require more training? And the answer was yes. So if they have these on hand, they cannot just send them to Ukraine unless Western operators are going to man them covertly. If they're going to have Ukrainians operate them, they are going to require training first. So then these would not be arriving on the battlefield anytime soon. There was also a question that I thought was really telling of how the media wants to present this to the public versus what's actually going on. So this was the question. Would it be fair to report that this package is part of a broader plan from the administration to accelerate support for Ukraine as a result of the midterms and maybe concerns that Republicans in Congress could possibly block future assistance down the line? Now, I've been covering these assistance packages every time they've come out for months. I've been doing this for months, and I have shown how the amount of equipment they were taking from their own inventories, the amount each package has been shrinking, and how they're not even taking things out of their existing inventories in terms of equipment being used by the US military now. Now they are taking equipment that has been mothballed. They are systems that the US military doesn't even use anymore. The Hawk anti-aircraft missile, for example, and they're spending money to refurbish them because they don't have anything that is functional and appropriate left to send Ukraine. So now they're sending things that are dysfunctional and inappropriate to send Ukraine. So it's not going to be Republicans being unwilling to send aid to Ukraine that is going to be the problem. The problem is there is nothing left to send Ukraine in the form of aid. And this is because of the West's neglect of their own industrial capacity. You have the military-industrial complex, but it's first and foremost, it is focused on profits, not focused on outcomes. And we're seeing that manifest itself. Here's another question asked by a journalist during this press briefing. The Hawk was never used in combat when it was part of a U.S. inventory, and it's been 20 years since the Marines have had it as part of their inventory. Ukraine used it at all yet? Has Ukraine used it at all yet? Or are they still in the sort of refurbishment? Have they gotten any to use so far? And the Pentagon responds, so we announced the refurbishment of the Hawk missiles just last week. So those will be going out for a contract to get refurbished. So in terms of what we have in our stocks, no, those have not gone over there. So they're not even going to be refurbished right now. They have to sort out a contract with some company, and then they will start refurbishing them, and then they will send them to Ukraine. And again, I want to reiterate this point. When you're refurbishing things, you can only do so many at a time. You can't do them all at once. You have to do them in batches. So even when this is in the process of happening, they're only going to get a small amount of the total amount at a time. So they're sending them old, dysfunctional, mothballed equipment that the US wasn't even using, hasn't been using for 2 decades. They're not even going to be getting them now. They're going to be getting them after they're refurbished, and they will be getting them in batches. And this is indicative of what the West has left and is sending Ukraine. Journalists were also asking about the number of Hawk missiles that were to be sent, and the Pentagon said, well, we can't tell you because of operational security reasons. The same journalist responded by saying, well, you told us how many Stinger missiles you were sending. You were boasting about it. Why aren't you telling us how many Hawk missiles are being sent? And so the Pentagon representative said that these are longer range missiles. We don't want Russia to know how many we're sending, because then all they have to do is count down how many are left as they're being used before they know it's okay, it's clear, and they can go. Well, Russia has many ways of figuring that out without waiting for the Pentagon to tell them during a press briefing. So this is actually really about protecting the Pentagon's and Washington's propaganda campaign. They want the world to think that the West is supplying Ukraine with an endless supply of weapons. They don't want the world to know that they're actually at the end of what they can supply Ukraine in terms of weapons. So this is what the West has left to send Ukraine. At the same time, Russia still has tank factories, missile factories, artillery shells, small arms ammunition, rockets. All of these things are still being manufactured and sent to the front line. You can see trains bringing in brand new T-90s to Ukraine to be used. Meanwhile, the United States is allotting money to refurbish systems that haven't been used in 20 years and weren't going to be used until desperation necessitated their use. Russia is bringing in new weapon systems. So they started this conflict with ground forces, air forces, naval forces that we were all familiar with. They also, during the process of this campaign, they began using new systems that we haven't seen Russia use before. The Garan 2 kamikaze drone, for example. So can you see the disparity here? Can you see Russia surging and becoming stronger while Ukraine is being dismantled and its material support diminishing? Can you see that? Never mind what you see on the map. Can you see what's going on in terms of troop and equipment losses, and also the diminishing capacity of its Western sponsors to replace those losses? Can you see that? This is a lot like a boxing match where an expert boxer allows their opponent to exhaust themselves. They block some punches, they move backwards away from other punches. That is until their opponent is exhausted. And then once they're exhausted, they begin the process of dismantling their opponent. It's the most efficient way and the safest, the smartest way to fight. And this is exactly what Russia is doing, but on a level of modern and large-scale warfare. Ukraine is suffering heavy losses. The Western media is even admitting that they are suffering heavy losses. Up until Russia left Kherson, every single assault launched in Kherson's direction was thwarted by Russian forces. Ukraine was losing entire brigades. They're losing men and equipment during these assaults. The West's ability to send more is diminishing. But we're talking about a country that had over 40 million people in terms of population. They had a massive army at the beginning of this. They still have a lot of manpower that they can call on. However untrained and ill-equipped they are, they still have the ability to send men and equipment into Russian defenses. It's not going to collapse overnight. It is going to be an accumulative process. As this is taking place, I want to remind people that Russia is in the process of dismantling Ukraine's critical infrastructure, the power grid, for example. They are still able to escalate that campaign, the campaign of dismembering Ukraine's critical infrastructure. They have many options to continue escalating, and they have not elected to exercise all of them yet. All of that is happening as Russia hands Ukraine more territory. Their dwindling supply of men and equipment are being thinned out even further as they advance, and they're just being stretched out in the process. And I just don't understand how people don't understand what demilitarization means. That's what it means. It doesn't mean taking and holding cities at all costs. That is not a war of attrition. That is a war of territorial conquest. That is not what Russia said it was going to do. That is clearly not what it is doing. After Kharkov, no matter what you thought about what Russia was going to do or wasn't going to do, they made it very clear that if they don't have the means to blunt an overwhelmingly large concentration of Ukrainian forces, if they feel they could, but they would lose a lot of men and equipment in the process, they're more than happy to do a fighting retreat and pull troops out of the area and pound them with long-range weaponry. Now they're doing the same thing around Kherson, and they're going to continue doing this until there's nothing left of Ukraine's military. Demilitarization. That was one of the three main objectives of the special military operation. That is what they have been doing since this began. That is what they're demonstratively doing right now as we speak. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share. Think about subscribing. It's free to do. It helps the channel grow. If you're watching this on YouTube, please check the video description below for other places you can find and follow my work. All of my YouTube videos are automatically backed up on Odyssey and Rumble. I'm also on Telegram. That is the social media platform of choice that I use. I am also back on Twitter, but I am only publishing links and new videos there. I'm not getting involved on that platform. It is one of the unhealthiest places on the internet today, I think. It is not a good place to spend a lot of time. In the video description below, you can find all of the links that I referenced during this video, as well as for ways you can help support my work. I do not monetize my YouTube channel. If you see an ad pop up, skip it because it's not helping me out at all. If you want to help me out, please do so through Buy Me a Coffee, through Patreon, and also PayPal. And to everyone who has been helping out, thank you so much. I could not do this work without that support. And as always, thank you for watching.